Today we're going to talk about how to make some soft jaws for your vise and better use it for gunsmithing. I'm Henry with Great Plains Weaponry. Stay tuned and let's get this quick little build done. Alright, so we are going to get started on making some new soft jaws for one of the heavy vices. So this is the jaw from the vise itself. We use a lot of browning and bluing on this, so the rust is expected. I wouldn't go as far as saying normal, but it's not unusual. It's easy enough to come off. But we're going to go ahead and make some soft jaws so that we can hold on to a project that we are currently working on where some nickel-plated parts are involved. Now, I don't like to use the rubber soft jaws. They're fine, but they have a lot of flex and twist to them, and these wooden ones just kind of bite in a little better. So let's talk about some materials that we want to use for soft jaws. Obviously, steel is going to bite pretty hard into just about anything we use. This is just some red oak. You can get it from the hardware store. Maple works great. This tends to be, tends to like to split after a while, but it's fairly cheap. This is actually cut off from when I had to make a couple of hand planes for working on a stock. So it's floating around. This stuff runs about 1/2 inch thick. Yeah, by 2.5 inches wide. Our jaws are just under 5 inches long, 3/8 by the looks of it wide, and 3/4 of an inch top to bottom. So that should fit in here pretty well. A little bit of left over there. So we're gonna have to make 2 of these, and they are fairly square and symmetrical. If yours are not, just make sure you pay attention to which side is the top. I like to put the bottom edge up against the actual piece of wood, just like that. And all we have to do now is trace it. So what I'll do is with a pencil here, mark that line a few times, and that will give us kind of our initial layout. Now, the reason I didn't put the circles in is I actually come about halfway up. So I'll split the center of that on those circles and I'll remark it and come back in. And that's going to give me a step up. And that's going to be important when it actually goes to finishing. Now, I'm going to come back here to the bottom and I'm going to put those circles in. Alright, so that will be one jaw. And just like that, that one's laid out. We're just going to flip it over, and we will make sure to flip our piece over here. And we're going to do the same thing. All right, and just like that, we have our jaws laid out. Now I'm gonna mark in between these lines, just so I know this is where we're gonna split. And that's all that is. It's just a little scribble in there so I know that's the zone I'm shooting for, just because they're so close together. But all right, so now I have a couple of options. I can take it over to the drill press first, and then I can take it over and cut that. I'm just going to cut all this out by hand. I'm going to use a drill press. That is going to be a power tool I use, just because getting into there with the hand drill and keeping it straight can be kind of difficult. So I'm going to go ahead and drop these in, and then we'll go from there. And we'll have to countersink these holes, so I'm going to need a countersink bit, and if memory serves, it's a 1/4 inch drill bit, but we will size that up. So I'm going to break the video here. We're going to go get the drill bit, we'll size it, and we'll kind of talk about some of the different tools we're going to use and how we're going to go about it. So this is kind of what we're going to be working with. This, I did check this with some calipers. This is a 1/4 inch bit, but that's for me. And whatever vice jaws you're using, just find a bit that fits through there as closely as you can. I would encourage you to get the screw laid up there and make sure it's going to be as tight as possible, but that's going to be a pretty good sign. We don't want a ton of play, but if I go up a size, I'm too big. So that's our drill bit. This here is a countersink bit. Sorry, it's still some wood debris in here from the last set we made a set last night. That's kind of where this is all coming from. But this is the countersink bit. Now it's on this long shank here. This is more so just to hold this on in this project. We're not really using the drill bit aspect of this except for just a centering tool. If you had something smaller, it'd go a lot further, just because this is kind of a problem with getting it in and out of the drill press, the amount it comes through. I'm going to use the hand plane here to flatten it down when it's all said and done. And that's just going to help us get everything nice and true. That's why we're leaving so much on the top here, so that after we get it bolted up, any errors we have in our cuts, we can plane it down flat. And that just helps make the vice jaws overall more usable. For cutting it out, I'm going to split it into 2 halves with a fairly aggressive handsaw. I love using this thing for all sorts of stuff. It's fairly clean cut in hardwoods. It's made for camping, but great saw. I absolutely love this thing. And then I got this little guy. Now I've actually gone and hammered the teeth down flat, and that just helps me kind of make it a flush cut saw. It does weaken them, and anytime it bumps the vise, I'll lose teeth. I don't know if you guys can see that there. This guy's about worn out. And when this dude does wear out, what'll happen is I'll actually split the handle off of this, and that'll become a scraper. We'll just grind the teeth the rest of the way off. So nothing goes to waste. It'll just get a new job. I'm going to drill these out while they're still squared, and that's going to let me put these in the clamp on the drill press and just knock those 4 holes. And then I'll come through and I'll countersink to about that depth. Whenever we countersink, we don't want to go just as far as these here. First off, we are making something that is going to be thicker than the original. So we already need deeper heads. So if we can end up with the same amount of distance from that shoulder to the backside, we'll be golden. The main reason we want to have thicker jaws whenever we go to wood as opposed to steel is we need to keep that head countersink down in there enough so as this stuff crushes in over time, we just need enough space in there. That's why we want it so thick. It's also why we want to countersink it so deep. I'm going to go ahead and drill those 4 holes and get them countersink, and then I'll meet you guys back over at the vise, and that's where we will finish this project up. This will be a quick one, but I think it's useful. This is one of those things that kind of helps set the hobbyist from the actual gunsmith apart, is taking the time to modify the tools to take better care of the parts goes a long ways. So I'm going to go drill some holes, and then I'll meet you back at the vise for cutting everything out. I'm going to get this all taken care of. I'll meet you guys over there. Alright, so now that the drilling itself is done, this is kind of what we're left with here. These countersink holes. And all we're kind of going for in this idea is when we drop the screw in, we just need a little bit of protrusion. If I can get it to focus here. There it goes. Okay, I was just too close. But you get that little bit of protrusion there. It's really all we're going for. But the head is in there considerably. Sorry for the bad lighting here. But the way we accomplish that is I have a setup right now where I'll just rest it across that and kind of hold it, because that quill will impact on my vise as it goes down. And most drill press will have some kind of an adjustment system here, so it may not be on this side, but this little turnstile here is just a jam nut that prevents it from going down too far. So I'll just set that, and on mine, I set mine up with this setup to run the full length, but I'll adjust this so that when I hit there, I'm at proper depth for my screw. Alright, So let's get over to the vise and we'll get this guy split apart and get it installed and start moving on it. Okay, so I've decided we are just going to use the cutoffs here, the flush cut. So that's going to give me, I think, the best result. So I'm going to go ahead and get started on that. And then once I get the first chunk cut off, then we'll flip it over and we'll cut the waste out. Then we'll stand them on end and we'll cut the parts off here on the front. So I'm going to cut through this. I'll either edit out the cut or I'll figure out how to speed it up. But let's get started. All right, so after just a couple of minutes of cutting here, we have our jaws. Now, we have sharp edges all the way around, and sharp edges tend to lead to tear out, but we don't want to do anything with those just yet. We want to go ahead and get these mounted into the jaws so that we can plane the tops down. What I will go ahead and do is I'll break. So we're going to get these mounted up and we'll plane the heads down. But what I do want to go ahead and do is, if you can see where the countersinks are, so the bigger side of the holes are going to be facing in. But we're going to have this edge right here, which is going to be down in like the corner. And then all these edges down here are going to be at the very bottom of the jaw. So they're going to be the hardest to break. So I'm going to go ahead and take care of this edge. And I'm going to round these corners here. I'm not going to focus too much on this corner here yet. I'll be able to get to that inside the jaw, but I'm not going to avoid it either. So if I end up running over it, I may just finish it off or whatever. But this corner, and then these faces here, those are the important ones. They're just going to be difficult to get to when they're mounted up. So let me get started on that. All right, so now if we look, maybe, all right, so we have these kind of jagged looking holes. Now you can just go in with a bigger drill bit and clean them up. I have a deburring tool, so I'm going to use that, but a really large drill bit will do the same thing. You just have to be a little bit more careful to make sure you don't tear out the wood, but I think you can get this little tool here for like 15-20 bucks at Harbor Freight or something. It comes with a bunch of different heads. It's good for a lot of things, but this is a big one for me. And just like that, it helps clean up some of those heads. All right, now we are ready to actually mount these dudes in. So it's important that we kind of get the dust and all that nastiness out of the bottom, because otherwise it can cause a twist to our new jaws and cause them to split. Alright, so we're just going to push our screw heads through and drop them on. They should, as long as you line up the edges, they should line up perfectly. And we're just going to start with hand tight on the screws here. We'll go through with a little wrench here, we'll tighten them up in a second. So I'm getting some interference here on this one, and I don't know why. So now we need to figure out what's going on. I'm not liking it. Okay, so here's what happens if the hole is a little out of spec, which I imagine this one is. It looks like it just wants to be a little low. So first things first, we want to try it on the other side and see if maybe it was a machining problem and we just cut it for this side. I'm imagining that it was me. It's something I did, but we'll see. Yep, for sure. Okay, so we know that the hole is a little too low, and this is okay. This is correctable. This happens sometimes with these quick-made shop projects. So let's see if it was something we did wrong in a pattern, or if it's just something where I didn't line that up all the way on the drill press. Alright, so looks like it's just something with that one, and that's okay. We can fix that. So I'm going to go ahead and tighten this one up just so I don't forget that I didn't. And then we'll fix that one. And it'll be a pretty simple process. It just involves basically a rat tail file, and just remove a little bit of material and make sure that the countersink still works. And we should be good to go. Okay, so as this one sits right there, we know it's this hole that's causing our problem. So we're just going to take our rat tail rasp here, get it to focus. And this is just a coarse round file, but it doesn't do great for metal. It tends to dull out pretty quick. That's a thing with rasp. They're intended for wood. And we're just going to work that. And it shouldn't take a whole lot. And we just want to kind of oblong that hole a little bit here. And try it. So now that we're trying this, the important thing we want to check out is we're only going to test this side, and we're going to make sure we put it on the shelf first, because it should just want to go in for us like that. So far it seems pretty good. Let's try this one out. Make sure it's going to run in. Alright, so now we'll just use the wrench again and we'll tighten these up, and then we'll get the hand plane out and we'll get these tops flat. Okay, now we are back, and these are pretty close to flush, but there's a lip there, a couple of places. So we're just going to get the hand plane and we're going to deck those flat. Now this is not going to be a tutorial on how to use a hand plane. There are woodworkers out there who can show you that. I'm starting to bite, so it usually means it's time to back off the blade a little bit. Clear out the iron. So I don't think we've got anything underneath the chip breaker. Okay. That is now nice and flush. Let's make sure it's flat. It is definitely not flat. I was leaning. Alright. That'll be good. We got some chatter marks now though. Make sure we didn't mess anything up. Alright, so now I'm just going to take this. I'm just going to run this across. That's going to help make it a little bit smoother. Red oak really does clean up pretty. It's easy to get. It's fairly easy to work. That's why I like using it for a lot of the hardwood requirements here in the shop. The goal here is to do this until they genuinely just look like one piece of wood. Nice and smooth. Just like that. Okay, now I've got some overhang on either side. Not something I'd be super concerned with. You might be able to kind of cut it out if you're really too concerned about it. That one kind of dips in. I got this side over here dips out a little bit. Just where. Now take a file and I'm just going to round these corners. This is going to prevent the jaws from kind of splitting out if they get hit by anything on that corner, which unfortunately is quite likely. Got to put something in kind of quick and bump the corner just right. I want to split out the jaws. These aren't going to last forever. They'll be good for a while. In a professional setting, they're good for about 6 months before you have to plane them back down. You can get more use out of them if you really try, but I'll get rid of them if they get too dirty, just impregnated with metal or whatever. They're just not worth the risk. They're the scratch risk. Alright, now I have these sharp corners here, and just like I did on the other side, I'm just going to take the edge of this blade here, since it's going to be a scraper one day, and just start peeling those corners off. So for what it's worth, you get quite a bit of use out of this little Lowe's, I think it's like a $10 saw. These are pretty nice. They're not wonderful, but they're not awful, and for the price, they're really hard to beat. Especially after they die. I think I get more use of them after they go dull than I do beforehand. Without that, one of the best scrapers is this little saw blade here. Alright, well, now I'm just going to polish off that a little bit. So I got a spot down there that don't want to work with me. And then I'm going to round these corners out. Alright, now open it up. And you got some choices you can make here. You can leave these as fairly sharp corners and use the entire face all the way up to the top as a clamping force. I like to keep mine longer than that, so I'm just going to remove that sharp corner here too. And then again, I'm just going to break these edges, that corner there. And just like that, we have some new soft jaws. So, I give you an idea here of what these things can do. So, this is a muzzle device that was removed. It was a pin welded, thus it's been destroyed. But these guys here are more than adequate. To hold that guy in place while you do whatever work you need to do on it. And they'll kind of take some abuse. I don't know if you guys can see that. Let's see if we can't zoom in here. They'll take the abuse. You got that little divot there, and it's just from the nose of this, well, this side. But they can do that. I have used this little pocket here to hold on to like bolt heads, like on like the rifle bolt itself, just because they're little round pockets. You can support them that way, and those are great. You can use any of that. It's a regular working vise. It'll hold on to most things. You'll have plenty of clamping power. So this here is a reaction rod. So this is used to hold on to the AR-10. I'm sorry, this one's the AR-15. The AR-10, we have one as well. But it'll hold on to that, and you'll lock the receiver onto here. This is fine for this here. But if I was going to be doing heavy work on it, I would probably put the steel jaws back in. And that's why for most of this vice's life, it will have steel jaws in. Also, if I'm doing any kind of finish work, I tend to be a little leery of these because they can kind of glue themselves to the metal. But it's all the force one could potentially want out of it. So, I don't know, maybe they'll have a more permanent residence in your shop than they do in mine. But anyways, I'm Henry with Great Plains Weaponry. Thanks for coming along on this fairly quick project here of upgrading the shop tool a little bit to make it more useful for guns. Thanks.